Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Sailor's Disgrace. There's a lot to cover right now, and I'm excited about this episode for many reasons. I feel like I have hit, or not hit, but reached a level in my healing and understanding of my entire life, including obviously my sexual assault and how that impacted all aspects of who I am. Um, but there's a lot to uncover here, so I'll just take it piece by piece. But I would like to acknowledge that it is Men's Mental Health Month, and I'm kind of tying this into um, Safe Waters as well, because I'm very proud of what we've been doing there. And we have many men that have reached out, other survivors of sexual assault, and I'm honored to be a part of their journey, to be a part of their healing process. It's truly remarkable, that community that we're building and that appreciation of each other. It's very humbling. It's very true that I realize that now, true to who I am. That over the past several years, it's been 2.5 years since I started this podcast and this group. It was early of 2023. And since then, it was me figuring out who I was and what is it that I feel like I need to bring to the table, and what is it that calls me to do this kind of work. And at that time, it wasn't really work. I was just more sharing and seeing what kind of community, what other people would need help, or just a voice to listen, or someone, a shoulder to cry on, or anything like that. And it's just been growing exponentially to the point where I met Megan and Joanne, and you guys know the story if you've been following along. But and then Emily, and we all just formed that team at Safe Waters, and that took off, excuse me, in January of this year. And we've been helping so many survivors of assault and harassment, and we've reached so many milestones, and we've it's been wonderful as a team. And I consider everyone that joins our group, or at least reaches out to us, as part of that team. We're all part of that team. We're all connected. And it's truly beautiful to watch it unfold and develop so naturally. We're not forcing any of this stuff, and it just keeps enriching ourselves, enriching each other. Excuse me. And I feel like we really are part of something powerful, part of something that is needed. That real sense of community. It's something that I've learned not to regret the past, or wish, oh my God, it'd been easier if I had this, or so many mistakes were made. But I see the need for this, and I do see that, man, if this was a thing 20 years ago and that happened to me, like I could have been a part of a community. It could have really overall just helped my healing process. But that's okay. I think it was through my own journey, obviously, that I was able to discover that I had to create that space, with help with other people. And I finally got to a point in my life where I could address those things, and I could reach out, and I could form partnerships and trust and care. And again, it just keeps growing and growing. And it's truly humbling. And it's to be a witness to it is been one of my life joys. And I like to talk about self-care. I really would. I think that's gonna be the theme of this episode. I'm kind of spitballing on this. I'm going from the heart. I have a few notes of things I want to touch on, but something I've really taken to heart lately, and it's, in order to help others, we really must help ourselves first. Okay. And that takes many forms, and everyone's going to be different, right? And it's not necessarily just trauma response and recovery, which is the focal point of Sailor's Disgrace and Safe Waters, but our overall health, right? Our overall well-being. It's everything from your physical, spiritual, social, mental, like everything is all tied together. All of that is tied together, and sometimes we're completely out of alignment with something. And for the trauma response, it can be completely devastating. We've had something that's been taken from us. It's brutal, and it's unfair, and it's cruel, and it's all these things, right? And depending on where we were in our lives when those things happened, it affects us differently, right? And we are all products of our environment. So as we grow up, from the time that we're born, and the influences we have from our family and friends and whatever that may look like, we all have different skills and different tools basically that we can do or apply to help us through life and guide and understand that. And some of us are given better tools from the beginning, right? And that comes from generations of our families, right? We all imprint these things and pass them down from timeline to timeline to timeline. And this may sound crazy for those of you just jumping into this, but I'll explain how I came to all these realizations and how it's impacted me. But we do have these within ourselves, right? And in particular, what happened to me with the Coast Guard, and I won't get into my family trauma because it is personal and it means a lot to other people in my life too. But just know that I also have some childhood traumas that deeply resonated with me and deeply impacted how I treated myself, how I treated others, and it left me ill prepared to handle what happened to me when I was 19 years old. So naturally, I couldn't handle it. I had to carry on with my life. I had to suppress that completely within my subconscious, and I did that for, and again, if you've been following all this story, you understand it, but a period of 12 years where I just did not acknowledge that that had happened to me, and it manifested itself in many ways, right? And I drowned it with alcohol and work and family and things that to really distract myself, but I was falling apart. And I was completely out of alignment with who I was. I lost joy in things that I used to love. I didn't feel creative anymore, and I was a very creative child. I loved writing, and I loved art and music, and I was really in tune with that stuff, and I still had that love and appreciation for it, but I wasn't able to, I wouldn't allow myself to create it or really dive into it like I used to. And it was all because I was just completely out of alignment with who I was. I couldn't face this trauma. I couldn't face this terrible thing that had happened to me. I didn't have the toolkit. I didn't have the emotional intelligence or wherewithal, and that's okay. Or I've learned that, looking back on it now, that 19, 20-year-old Julian just wasn't equipped for that. And it's not his fault. It's just what he had. And I've learned to love that version of myself, and I have a deep empathy for that. And I also have learned empathy for those in all aspects of my life, for all my family and all my friends, and even those that cause great harm to me. I have empathy and understanding of that because I get that they were also only using the tools that they understood. I don't forgive or excuse any of those actions, especially the criminal actions or the severely harmful actions that people do to each other. In this case, with my story, my situation, we all have choice, but those choices are very limited when you don't understand the consequences or you don't understand alternatives. And that's a sad state for those people, right? And it comes down to a self-awareness, right? And it comes down to, like, if those things happen to you and then you carry those on and you pass them on to another person and another person, and you keep that cycle of self-destruction and devastation and harm, is going to keep perpetuating, right? So I have empathy for that. I understand that maybe the people that assaulted me were also abused when they were younger, or were subjected to some other abuse or harm of some kind, and they just could not cope, and they acted out and perpetrated that onto me and other people. And it's terrible. It's it's traumatic, right? It's an awful thing, but I understand it now. So how I got to this level of understanding, right? And everyone's different. Everyone's going to find things that work for them and don't work for them. And I've tried a lot of different things since 2016, and since sharing my story, first with Shannon Nornberg, and then slowly increasing that circle, and getting mental health and medications, and that real hard struggle, especially at the beginning. But over the past 9 years now, it'll be 9 years in August that I started that. I've learned a lot, right? And I've been able to get to a point in my life where I'm finally receiving and receptive to change in my life, receptive to acknowledgement of those things that happened to me, acknowledgement of others, understanding the empathy, understanding who I am, what I bring to this world, what I bring to myself and the ones I love. And I did that with, honestly, it was all that first struggle leading me onto this recent venture over the past several months of really heavy breath work and meditation. And it's been revelatory for me. I have done so much work in this space. And at first, not that I was skeptical, I've always been kind of open as far as, mindfulness and understanding and appreciating, free thought and different types of thought and religion and all that stuff. And that's just part of what I was raised with, right? I was raised in a Christian home, Southern Christian, but I also had a lot of exposure to like my mom's side of the family, very liberal, open-minded, kind of like my mom's sort of flower power child stuff of the 60s and 70s. And she really imprinted a lot of that on myself and my siblings. So I had an appreciation of that, right? So I think that helped me to open up to this type of healing, to this type of understanding of myself. And I'm not here to sell anything or to promote any kind of business or anything like that. Um, I really respect everyone's choice and finding their own path, right? But I will say, for me personally, and for other people I'm working with in this space, it's been life changing. It really has. I am more at peace with so much of my life. And this is fairly recent, within the last week, that I've really hit some major milestones and discovered things about myself, about my past that I had completely suppressed, even past my trauma from 2004, from my assault. There was other parts of me that I wasn't ready to address, and I found those things through that very deep breath work and through that very deep meditation. And when I found it, I was able to confront it with compassion. I was able to confront it with love and understanding and not fear. And some of those things were pretty dark things about me and about my past. And it connected a lot of dots in my journey through this healing process, as well as just my journey in life. I'm 40 years old, and it made so many things crystal clear about how and why I act the way I do, and the way I've treated myself and others, and the way I've lost my way at times, and not understood who I was, and had so much confusion and doubt and seeking validation and approval, and there's just the whole gamut, right? And it's just able to quiet that mind and dive into who I am, what I've been through, and again, like understanding that we're all just human, that we're all here, we are all connected, we all impact each other, and how we impact each other is a choice, right? And we have to learn about those choices, and we have to appreciate what we have, what we're given, what we've received, and how we can navigate those things, right? And we can learn right from wrong. We can learn what is it about ourselves that may not be helpful, or may not help others, right? And kind of steer your life into that flow that makes sense to you, right? And that lets you grow, lets you become who you are, and at that core, right? I know it sounds kind of hippie and crazy, but I just felt like I had to share all this, and I'm very excited now for the future. Part of what's been getting me lately into a negative mindset, the big thing is that my retirement's upcoming in the next 2 years, right? And I kind of had this feeling of, man, I'm just done with the Coast Guard. I'm so done. I want to be done. I already have 22 years in, 2 more years. My God, I don't know if I can make it, right? And it's with everything that I've been through, obviously. Talking to the Senate last year, meeting with the former commandant and all the officers, and getting the response I received, and things just not necessarily going the way I wanted, and just being frustrated, right? And just being like, man, I just want to just leave it all and just put it behind me. But it's always going to be a part of me. I realize that now. And I can enjoy this process of retirement. I can take this time over the next 2 years and really prepare myself for that next chapter of my life. Really prepare myself and be receptive to this change. Be receptive to whatever it is that I'm going to find as I start my transit, right? And since I've opened myself up with this, I've realized that I am an empathetic person. I really am, and I really do want to help others. It calls back to everything I knew as a child, and one of the reasons that I joined the service in the first place, and I lost so much of that along the way. But I always found joy, coincidentally, through helping others, and I've been very fortunate to be a part of some really incredible missions in the service. I've done hurricane responses. I've done like in the immediate aftermath of hurricanes, and getting people off of remote stranded islands, and literally airlifting people, and major environmental responses, and helping even sometimes on the day-to-day stuff that I do as a marine inspector, like helping mariners stay safe. Like that's what I've enjoyed, is like the helping of others, and like the guidance and insight and connections that I make with people. And I like to speak on that for a second too, about how the Coast Guard sometimes is antithetical to that, right? With all the issues that we've seen and that we talk about on this podcast, and within our group, about the scandals and corruption and lies and cover-ups, and I understand them now. I don't forgive them. There's not an excuse, right? But I understand where those people came from. I get that they were simply part of a system, a very toxic system, one that promoted those ideals, right? That promoted suffocation, that promoted image over quality, image over protection, over safety, right? Over humanity. And it's a very toxic system, and it applies to not just the Coast Guard, obviously, but I don't want to get political, but it applies to a lot of that as well, right? And you see all the trouble in the news forever, right? Everyone's panicking right now with certain situations, but we've always been in turmoil. You go back to recorded history, there's always been something, right? And it drives back to that idea of control, and that idea of power, and that idea of promoting yourself and making yourself bigger than you are, and putting people subordinate to you. And in particular, I see with the military is that we have that structure built in, right? We have this chain of command, and it has a purpose. I see that too. Like, there is a purpose for a chain of command. We put ourselves in harm's way for certain missions, and certain missions, I'll be honest, I don't agree with, right? Not just Coast Guard, but military in general, and not just the U.S. military. I mean, the whole works. But there's a reason why those chains of command exist, right? So people follow orders, that they're able to deliver and perform missions that need to be done without guessing it, right? But the inherent flaw with that is that it can be abused, right? And when that abuse is promoted, when that abuse is part of the culture, it just manifests itself and infiltrates down to I like to say again, like the deck plate level. It goes from the very top to the very bottom, and we all impact each other, every one of us. And if you are out there promoting that kind of toxicity, and you are, I understand it. I understand why. You made that high rank, you reached that position, with that environment, within that environment. And I was guilty of that myself. I know, like, especially when I first made chief and all that, I was always careful, and I was always cognizant of people and still aware and trying to help people, but I also fell into that system, right? There were times when I was your typical bravado chief and all that, and could share into the toxicity and fall into it. It's easy to, right? But it wasn't true to myself. I know that now, but I understand myself at that time. I empathize with Julian of 2013 and all that stuff. Like, I totally understand it, but it takes that self-awareness piece to step back and think about, why am I doing this? Why do I feel this way? Why am I angry at this? Why am I putting that person down? Why am I going along with the group when I clearly feel like what they're saying is garbage? Right? Why am I not questioning this? And part of it is because we're not supposed to question, right? especially within the military, like we aren't supposed to. You're not supposed to question leadership. It takes a really strong person to go against that grain, right? And we have to do it respectfully, and I appreciate that, right? And at certain ranks and positions, we can do that more freely. But it's very hard, to have this suffocating environment. And maybe some people thrive in it and do well. And apparently I did. I don't know how sometimes, and I'm still trying to figure that out. I think it was out of necessity, that I didn't just bottom out and leave the Coast Guard or do something worse. But I think I just kept myself alive by doing that and provided for my family. But I wasn't really true to myself, and that's okay, right? That's fine. I'm figuring that out now, and I am in the process, like I said, of retiring. I have plans in place for when I retire about where I want my next career to go, and it's very different from the Coast Guard, and those plans can change. I'm also comfortable with that, right? Like a year ago, I was pretty much dead set on becoming a lawyer. That's what I was telling people. That's what I told myself. But now that I'm really entering this, I don't like to use the word advanced healing stage, but this next phase, I'm really getting in tune with who and what I am, and I'm going a different route from that, and I'm okay with it, right? I think it's great to understand that things change in life, that we aren't necessarily in control of everything, and most of the time we're not in control of anything, and that's what causes so much strife, I think, within the military, within, like I said, the higher political realm and geopolitical and all that kind of stuff. It's that sense of control that people have, and I hate to break it to them, but we're not in control, right? Um, we can influence, we can assist, we can push things in certain directions and try to influence life, and sometimes it works, but to say that we are in control of any situation totally is just, it's a falsehood, right? And it's okay, right? We're all just trying to figure it out. But going back to the theme of this episode, I think it's taking care of yourself, making those realizations, and paying that forward, right? And whatever it means, it doesn't mean everybody has to be a healer, everybody has to, be a mental therapist or whatever it might be. But we are all here to help each other, right? In one way or another, and that could be anything. You could find out that you're the best at, being a chef or whatever it might be, and that's your passion, and you find joy in it, and you find harmony, and through that you're able to share that kind of passion and love with others, right? And just carry that through in your daily actions, and follow your core, follow whatever it is inside you that resonates, right? And I finally feel like I'm finding that again. And it was there at different parts of my life, but unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, it is what it is, right? It had to take a back seat, or it was just out of alignment for various reasons, and it's taken a lot of work for me personally to get to this point. I'm not trying to put myself on any kind of pedestal or say I'm better than anybody at all, right? I feel happy with where I am, and I'm excited to share that with all of you. And if anybody has questions on it or would like to talk about it, or anything at all, like I'm here. Here at Sailors Disgrace, also here at Safe Waters. The rest of the Safe Waters team is also here. We're all here to help each other. Whether you're still in the service, you've retired, you've been separated, you're whatever it is, and if you're another branch, that's also fine, And even if you're not in the military, I think we would even not entertain it. I know I would, assist where I could. I had that question come up to me recently, and I said, yeah, we're military focused, but we can make connections. It's okay. Like, we're not just in a stovepipe. So I think that's where I'll leave this episode. There's a lot to unpack there. There's a lot to understand, and I just wanted to share it because I am happy, and I am grateful, and I am so proud of everyone that I've met, and I'm through this podcast and through Safe Waters and throughout my life. It's been quite a journey, and it's just going to continue. And I don't know where it's going to take me exactly. Of course I don't. I've accepted that, right? And all I can say is that wherever it takes me, I'm there, right? And I hope we all are able to find that kind of peace in our lives, and that understanding of self, right? And for me, like finding that finally, and working on that, and there's still work to do, right? I know that. There's still a lot of things I need to connect and to understand and apply, and I'm doing that, right? But again, I'll just say that for breath work and meditation, that is huge for me. It really helped me to find those parts of myself, right? And to understand them. So, I just want to say I'm grateful. I'm so grateful for all of you. I'm so grateful for everyone that reaches out to us. And if you don't reach out to us, I'm grateful that if you listen, and that you're curious or that you're interested, that's great. We all are learning, we're all growing, we're all living, and we can all help each other in one way or another. And thank you again, everybody. And as always, take care of yourselves.